I actually do think the African American churches have more to lose than we white churches do. Now, if you go into Redeemer, you're going to find that Redeemer is about 45% Anglo, about 45% Asian, and about 10% Black and Hispanic. A lot of the churches in the middle or lower Manhattan that are more evangelical, Orthodox, charismatic will have that same kind of mixture. There's very few white churches around. I'd say the ethnic churches, which would be the African American churches, the Latino churches, the Asian churches, it is more difficult for them to become multi-ethnic because in some ways they're community centers for their people, and they could lose some of their power, in a sense, as representing their people to the broader culture. It could be that in post-Obama, there's big questions about the old models for how you do ethnic empowerment. But that's not something for me to speak to, I don't think. I mean, I actually counsel all churches. I say, you should be as multi-ethnic or more multi-ethnic than your neighborhood. So if you live in a neighborhood that is so many African Americans, so many Black, Latinos, so many white, you should try, your church should look like your neighborhood. And if you actually do better than the neighborhood, because usually out in the neighborhood, those groups of people don't mix all that well. They're usually alongside of each other, maybe friendly, but they don't really work together. So if you could be a church that shows how the groups work together, you could, in a sense, be more multi-ethnic than your neighborhood. But basically, we say, be as multi-ethnic as your geography. So I push that pretty heavily. And so, yeah, I would love to see a multi-ethnic future church, but I realize the ethnic churches have a lot to lose. So I'm careful when I say that. I don't want to make them feel that somehow they're doing wrong to stay more mono-ethnic. I still see a role for that. I don't see much of a role for a purely white church anymore. But I do see a role for the ethnic churches. When I got here in the late 80s, nobody thought that was the case. Again, that's one of the ways in which New York City has been a very big help to me, not so much my theological training. I got here and recognized the potential of cities, I think, and began to say churches have got to become more pro-urban because the culture is getting more pro-urban, and it really is. The negativity of Americans toward the cities has really turned around. We don't quite know why. Some people said it was Friends and Seinfeld. That in the early 90s you had these great sitcoms that showed people in cities being very attractive, and I don't know what it is. But I sensed the change in the early 90s, that suddenly there was a change in the culture. So I say to churches, be pro-urban, don't be anti-urban, because the trend, at least for the next 50 years, is going to be very pro-urban.